him. Time has no meaning here. Your pain will...
This was my time.
Twin terrorists! Nelson!
Hello and welcome, Exiles. I want to talk about a build I'm really excited about. Now, this character isn't min-maxed. It isn't, like, fully realized. It's a character that I kind of just wanted to test out an idea, see if it was functional, and I really liked my results so far, which is why I want to save this build to actually make it in next league. I'll go over the core concept or the core idea. It was basically a matter of, on stream, I was, like, working through ideas of ways to use Instruments of Zeal and still enjoy playing with this as a ascendancy point, because I think it's a cool ascendancy point, but it's just so awkward. And a bunch of ideas were thrown out, and one of the ideas I ended up going with was to get a movement skill cast on crit shield charge. The idea was being, if I'm shield charging around the map, I'm always going to have good uptime on my Instruments of Zeal, and then I can self-cast outside of the shield charge to also get damage that way. So the core concept for the way this character was set up was I would shield charge around, and then I'd have high uptime Instruments of Zeal. Instruments of Zeal, for the sake of why are we doing this, it gives 75% AoE, which really feels good. That's why the explosions are big. It gives 75% reduced mana costs. This means you can run a Divine Blessing without even putting it on your life tap pool, because that's no longer a thing, and it works. It also means you don't have mana problems as a cast on crit character, or just mana problems at all. This one node solves it, which is really pretty cool while you have Instruments of Zeal up, which you do because you're running around with shield charge. And then third is to have the biggest modifier, which is 75% more cast speed. So the idea was I'd be shield charging around, and then every now and then in between shield charges I'd throw a Blade Vortex in. Because I got all this cast speed, it means it won't interrupt our movement that much, and we can keep a decent Blade Vortex going while we're mapping, just zooming around thanks to Instruments of Zeal. Now this setup, it worked, don't get me wrong, but I've been thinking about it a little bit longer. The night I dropped the Mirror of Kalandra, I couldn't go to sleep because I had adrenaline pumping in my veins, and I was theorycrafting this character. And I've come to some conclusions, which is this character can get better if I go for a cast on crit Cyclone setup along with a separate self-cast setup. And the idea I'm thinking is cast on crit shield charge with Blade Vortex. So while I'm mapping, I'm popping off Blade Vortexes. Looks like I got a phone call. As I was saying, so I'm popping off with Blade Vortex. Every time I'm shield charging into a pack, I'm getting another stack of Blade Vortex. I think throughout the mapping process, this should get close to 10. And also, the fact that I'm going to be min-maxing into a cast on crit character, I'm going to actually cap my accuracy. If you look at my accuracy right now, it's bad. I'm at 1700. This is very bad for cast on crit. It's more or less a result of I really was getting lazy about crafting gear, and I just stole a bunch of gear from other characters and just sandwiched it all together. The only piece I made for this character was the chest piece and the gloves, and everything else I kind of just yoinked around to try to just make something work. More or less, we'll actually min-max into a cast on crit character, we'll actually have good accuracy, and we'll be casting Blade Vortex every time we're shield charging into a pack. So what's going to be happening is, as we're mapping, we'll shield charge Blade Vortex will be popping up, and that'll be killing the monsters, proccing the explosions, proccing the chain explosions, like you're seeing in this video, but with higher quality of life. And then by the time we get to a boss, that's when we go into a cast on crit Blade Fall setup, where we're tightly stacking the blades all in one location. Now, the way this is all going to synergize is I shield charge into a boss, I have Blade Vortex, I start Blade Fall, cast on critting. Those get onto the ground, and since I am using Instruments of Zeal, I'll have 75% more cast speed. I just need to pop one Blade Blast, and it'll start a chain reaction, which will also synergize with Blade Vortex specifically, because Blade Blast gets 80% more AoE per Blade Vortex blade exploded, and it will explode one. It'll be hopefully a large amount of overlaps on the Blade Vortex, because I'll be running something like a CoC setup, CoC Spell Cascade, something like that for my Blade Ball setup, and that way when I just tie in these random casts of Blade Blast, we'll be hitting the boss a lot of times a second. It'll be actually pretty good DPS wise, I believe. I've done a setup like this in the past and it worked pretty well, but it also was with much less quality life, much less AoE, much less cast speed, so it won't have quite the good feels of the concept I have in my head. Now, this character I have here has a bunch of like GG gear, but gear that's not really appropriately set up for what I'm actually going to be building and how I'm going to be setting it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a maybe day 2, day 3 sort of League Start gear setup to actually test this concept out. I'll make a separate video on that because I don't really want to go and min-max this character in League, because I'd much rather make the character on the next League, not in this current League that's about to end, right? I'm running out of time really to do that. I got some work I gotta keep getting work done, and I don't have a lot of time to play in-game, so I figured just doing a remediary test setup to see how well this would work on day 2, 3 gear. I think it could be pretty strong, and then it has the ability to ramp into a character that's really fun to map with, as well as do bosses on and be quite well-rounded, right? That's the concept in my head. All in all, this character I have set up, this is not... It's not going to look anything like this. I'll have a completely different setup when I do my League Start video and stuff like this. This was more or less just, I was throwing something together. I threw together a character with Leadership's Price, with Brittle, with Cast on Crit, and I ultimately don't like this setup. I think I can do a much better setup, and that's what I want to work towards in next League. The idea was, I think, decent enough to get a proof of concept, but as far as an actual min-max character, I don't think I would recommend the way I've set this character up. I think it's just kind of poor in comparison to what it could be. That is my thoughts, at least, on that. So, real quick, I need to interject this in here because I forgot to go over it, and it's really important. How do we get the good explosions? It's 3 simple things. Number 1, Herald of Ash. This gives you those cool aesthetics. You can put MTXs on this. It makes the build look fun, look cool, look aesthetic, right? Next up, you need a Crusader Explode mod chest. This has a elevated one. This is 35% chance versus a T1 roll gets you 30%. Really, you just need the T1 roll with 30%. The 12% AoE it's overkill. This character gets a ton of AoE. I'll go through it real quickly with you. You get 75% AO from Instruments of Zeal, and then you get 20% here. And frankly, I'm going to repat the tree, and I'm probably going to get another 20% here. Not to mention, you can pick up AoE if you get like crafted +1 AoE on your helmet, or craft +1 AoE on your gloves, stuff like that. You get enough AoE, you don't need Elevated Explode, you'll be fine. So 3 ingredients: Herald of Ash, Explode Chest, AoE. And that's how we get the explosions that are built. Back to the video. As always, I was going to say I hope you guys enjoyed this video, but I was going to give you one last mapping showcase to show you again what this looks like mapping. It's so aesthetic in my opinion. It feels so good. I got gifted the Despair MTX, which I'm really grateful for. Incarnate hooked me up with it, and it's just something about it's just so aesthetic. Those explosions are just better than... I used to be... Oh, what's the word? I used to be a big fan of, oh, why am I spacing on it? It was the, Automaton Herald of Ash effect. I always thought that was my favorite, but since I've, got Despair now, I just think it's better. It's more enjoyable to look at, in my opinion. So... as you can see, this character's single target isn't super OP, it isn't anything like crazy, which is part of the reason why I've rethought some things about how we get single target, and I want to say I know, I'm fairly confident, I can never say I know for sure 100,000% or whatever, but I'm fairly confident this other setup I have inside of my brain will be not only smoother for mapping, but also much smoother for bossing, and it'll guarantee 100% uptime on Fanaticism in both boss fights while mapping, and in boss fights. Sorry, I said that incorrectly, because I'm both cycloning, which is giving me the Fanaticism charges on bosses for cast on crit Bladefall, and then I'm shield charging for the Fanaticism charges while I'm mapping. So that's the sort of synergy idea I have set up. Anyways, as always, I hope you enjoy the video. Take care, Exiles.